High above the galactic rim, an alien armada gathers to crush a primitive species, but when scanners reveal an impossible object emerging from the black, silent, still, and utterly wrong, command falters. The War Council of the Zorvani Confederation watches. Then the human warship speaks. The observation conclave of the Zorvani High Armada hovered within the negative pressure field of Vexar's edge. 5 light minutes from Sol, 93 fleets, 44 species. The final convergence before the eradication of humanity. The walls pulsed with bioreactive light, absorbing anxious movements. Crystal symbiotes flickered data patterns through their translucent bodies. Every commander, from silicon-shelled Helkari to the flame-draped Vuchna, loomed over the tactical sphere. At the center, Sol, blue-green, unevolved, laughably fragile. Scan cycle complete. No active orbital defenses, radiation consistent with pre-jump civilizations. The venerant strategist prime, Krix Talav, clicked her mandibles. Begin alignment for atmospheric rupture sequence. Wipe them clean. Then it happened. Interference. A Trelxan sensory node whined. Gravitational flux. Not planetary, not natural. The display rippled, fuzzed. Reset, and there it was. A black shape emerged from Saturn's shadow, not moving, yet displacing gravity like a collapsing star. No energy signature, no heat, no comms, just presence. A silhouette too angular for nature, too still for sanity. "What is that?" whispered one of the eldest among them. No one spoke. No one moved. The Zorvani had crushed dozens of species. Each time the prey screamed, begged, launched missiles, all so predictably noisy. But this was silence weaponized. A flicker. The warship's hull distorted light like a lens made of void. Some kind of cloaking, but it had uncloaked. Willingly, they were meant to see it. The thing was too massive to belong to a species. Still using combustion. It had no thrusters, no solar sails, just a gaping, deliberate wrongness. A design language they didn't understand, and feared. Inside the bridge of the Vindicator, Commander Lex Hale stood motionless, observing sensor returns. His face was calm, measured. He tapped his earpiece once. "Fleet status?" "All dark." "Sir," replied Lieutenant Ramos. "Cloaks holding, targeting locked, EMP matrix primed." A heartbeat passed. Hale glanced at the fleet-wide relay. No need for orders. Every captain already knew the protocol. Silent judgment. He looked up at the godless swarm of ships crowding their orbital range, each one packed with beings who thought humanity hadn't noticed the spies, the sabotage, the treaties broken with a smile. They had noticed. Commander Hale pressed one switch, broadcast channel open. He stepped forward, voice low and steady. "You saw our planet and assumed we were alone. No threats, no bravado, just truth. We saw your knives 10 years ago. We built this in 8. Silence. There's something you should know." The Vindicator's hull began to shift, unfolding into impossible geometry, parts moving in directions that defied three-dimensional logic. Energy patterns coiled inward. Stars bent behind its silhouette. A dozen Zorvani ships began to retreat. Their leaders did not command it. They fled on instinct. "This is the last war you will begin." The comms cut. No missiles launched. No beam of light split the sky. Just one human warship. Alone, watching, waiting. And every Armada ship, every general and warbred hybrid froze in place. "Cut the feed!" screamed strategist Krix, her mandibles vibrating with unprocessed panic. "Shut it down!" The observation sphere blinked dark. Too late. The image of the human ship, that thing, was already burned into the collective subconscious of every species present. Some wept without understanding why. Others clawed at their necks, gasping, as if gravity itself had turned traitor. On the Zorvani flagship Varkan's Will, alarms wailed in frequencies tuned to suppress biological panic. The effort failed. "Explain," Krix hissed, turning toward her lead, Xenopsych. That artifact, that structure, why does it feel like we are prey? Because we are, came the dry reply. 1,000 simultaneous subspace channels erupted with chaos. Withdraw the Halkari vanguard. It must be a bluff. Attack now. Our weapons aren't locking. Targeting AI won't engage. Why can't I stop trembling? Across the chaos, the only constant was the black outline of the warship, unmoving, unblinking, as though observing a vivisection from the outside in. Krylos slammed her fist onto the neural anchor node. They're a Tier 3 civilization. This is impossible. No, the psych whispered. Not Tier 3, not anymore. Aboard the Vindicator, the silence was thicker than armor. Commander Hale stood before a forward viewport that wasn't glass, wasn't metal. It was something grown from singularity-tempered carbon strands, laced with neural memory lattice. It pulsed softly, alive. "Countdown at T-3 minutes, murmured Lieutenant Ramos, voice tight. "All strike groups on final vector hold." "No changes," Hale said. "Let them watch." A technician 3 decks below whispered a prayer. The Vindicator heard it, filed it, matched the pattern to thousands of similar prayers. It did not judge. It remembered. Above the orbital plane, a bold signal pulsed from one of the lesser species, the Yavari. They were diplomats, scientists. They had not wanted this war. But they had joined the Armada, as cowards do. Their emissary's image shimmered into being on a shared, open-band hologrid. "Human vessel," the Yevari's voice warbled. "We request, beg, clarification. What is your intent?" A long moment passed. Commander Hale didn't speak. Instead, the ship responded, not with language, but with a timestamp. The timer appeared in every ship's display. Simple, brutal. 002:59, the Yevari emissary began to stammer. "What is this? What happens when..." The countdown ticked down another second. 002:58, they all understood. A protocol was unfolding, and no one knew what it did. Krylos Talav turned to her generals, voice raw. "We can't let that timer reach 0. Fire everything." Dozens of fleet segments lit up, targeting coordinates locked, weapons charged. The Vindicator didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't care. 02:45 at Troz 02:45. 93 fleets fired, missiles laced with dark matter shrapnel, kinetic rods the size of city blocks, graviton imploders, biocorrosive plasma pulses that could strip a moon of its crust in seconds. They screamed toward the Vindicator, converging, on one impossible shape with all the fury of a betrayed galaxy. And then, nothing. The weapons never arrived. They never even detonated. High above Saturn, the space around the human warship folded. Not warped, folded like pages of a book turning out of order. The missiles twisted mid-flight, vanished into sudden tears in local space-time. Kinetic rods inverted. Plasma curled back into itself, collapsing into blue embers that fizzled out. With a whisper, every fleet sensor blinked red, then flatlined. "This is a containment field," gasped a Thriz navigator. "We're not fighting a ship. We're inside its cage." On the bridge of the Vindicator, Hale's eyes never left the viewport. "Status?" "Field integrity holding. 0 impact. All enemy munitions neutralized," Ramos said, breathless. Soft tone pinged once. "Phase 1. Ready." Hale nodded. "Initiate." To the Zorvani and to every alien present, nothing appeared to happen. No counterattack. No retaliation. Just more stillness. Then ships began going dark, one by one. Power cores shut down, not exploded, deactivated. Lights flickered, engines fell silent. Hull systems failed, life support flickered, and not randomly. Only ships that had fired, the rest floated untouched. Reactor failure across sectors G through M. "We're venting oxygen. My gods, we're losing hull cohesion. Weapons offline, controls unresponsive. We're drifting." Within 90 seconds, 27 ships had become lifeless hulks. Their crews, still alive, were forced to watch their own systems die around them. Krix Talav screamed across comms, "What is this? What kind of war is this?" The Zorvani hadn't lost this badly in 12,000 years. This wasn't combat. This was dissection. Aboard the Vindicator, silence persisted. The warship was not showing strength. It was showing restraint, and restraint in the face of annihilation was terror incarnate. Message. From Central Relay Node, Ramos said. Civilian frequencies are flooding open lines. They're begging. All of them. Not the generals. No, they've gone quiet. Hale closed his eyes. Thought of Earth. Of the day the Sol Treaty was burned, when humanity had opened its doors to the stars and received knives in return. He thought of the cities that had gone dark. He thought of the children that never reached orbit. Prepare Phase 2, he said. In orbit, alien ships still powered stood frozen. No orders, no retaliation. No idea what to do next. Then, as if hearing a silent signal, the Vindicator moved for the first time, not with thrusters, not propulsion. It shifted forward, space bending around it like silk. No sound, no flash, just motion, as though reality gave way to let it pass. Every ship locked its targeting systems again, this time even without orders. And again, no lock-on. It's ignoring physics, someone whispered. It's ignoring us, someone else said. That was worse. 1. The countdown ticked onward. With the Armada in shambles and the countdown nearing its end, one alien admiral breaks ranks and transmits a desperate plea for mercy. Humanity answers, but not with forgiveness. Instead, the Vindicator demands something no alien power has ever considered. Surrender, not to a species, but to a principle. The timer ticks on. The countdown neared its final minute. 5900. 58 on the command deck of the Vuksari dreadnought. Heart of Nine Suns, Admiral Velshar stared into the dying light of their own armada. He had fought in 6 border purges, burned 3 moons. He'd never seen this. There was no doctrine for what he was watching, no playbook for a ship that defied logic and casually erased fleets without firing a shot. Every bone in his exo-shelled frame screamed to retreat. But there was nowhere to go. Humanity hadn't just ambushed them. They had predicted them, built for them, waited for this moment, and now humanity was letting the seconds count down. This is Admiral Velshar of the Vuksari First Command, he said into the open comm. To the Terran warship, we surrender, not just our fleet, our allegiance. Please stop. The line went quiet. No response. Then something changed. The Vindicator blinked once on every fleet sensor. A transmission unfolded, not in audio, not in light, but in thought. It was a psychic override, blunt, undeniable, raw. Every being in the Armada felt the message in their mind like a cold wind. You misunderstood. This is not revenge. The voice was human, but larger, weighted with layers of truth not meant for translation. This is not conquest. Across the broken fleets, beings fell to their knees. Some screamed, some sobbed. The voice continued. This is consequence. And then, new data, flooding every ship. It wasn't a weapon. It was evidence, files, logs, images, recordings, every act of sabotage, every violation of Earth's open-sky diplomacy, every covert raid on human colonies, every backroom deal sealed with plasma and profit, all the lies laid bare. Humanity hadn't reacted out of fear. They had collected and built and planned, because they weren't animals, they were judges. On the Vindicator, Commander Hale stood in. Silence. The countdown hovered at 0:35. Velshar broke, Ramos said softly. Others are following. Surrender signals from the Threes, Yavari, even the Halkari. Hale nodded once. Begin Phase 2. Partial activation. Ramos hesitated. Sir, it's going to terrify them. That's the point. Across the system, the space behind the Vindicator cracked open. From nothingness emerged 7 more ships, each one larger, older, stranger, not sleek, not graceful. They looked like they'd been pulled from the bottom of some ancient ocean of black stars. Alien ships turned hard in every direction. The Vindicator hadn't been humanity's last stand. It had been their first line. The voice returned. We do not seek domination, we seek prevention, and finally, surrender, not to us, but to peace, or we will end your wars for you. The countdown hit, and 10 and froze, not at 0, at 10, deliberate. Waiting. Judgment had paused. They named the new arrivals wrong. Some called them Leviathans, not others said harbingers, but the truth was quieter. Simpler. They were called arbiters, and they were not designed to fight. They were designed to hold a mirror. Across the shattered fleets, command ships flickered as encrypted data streams poured in from the Vindicator's core AI. Blueprints declassified, events replayed, Earth's rise after betrayal mapped step by step. Each arbiter opened a psychic relay and projected to every ship within 100,000 kilometers. Not threats, memories, the burning of Europa Station, the bombing of Jakarta, the genocide attempt at the Mars terraform grid, and the silence that followed, how humanity rebuilt, bled, advanced. The aliens had thought humans were slow to respond. They hadn't realized humanity had gone silent because they were learning, grieving, forging. Below decks of the Vindicator, buried in the ship's neurocore, Dr. Elena Roth activated subroutine Ararat. She was not military. She had designed the Vindicator's moral architecture. What are they seeing now? She asked the AI quietly. Their own actions, the voice replied, calm, mechanical, unfiltered, through our eyes. She nodded. Then they'll see the truth. Some will deny it, others will fracture, a few will be changed, and the ones who don't, she asked, will be marked. Elena looked at the frozen countdown. 10 seconds, eternally suspended. Will it restart? Only if they lie again. In the Zorvani flagship, strategist Krix Talav stood broken, her claws stained with blood from her own temples. She had once given the order to begin the annihilation of Earth. Now, she watched as her legacy collapsed into light and data, her lies laid bare in front of thousands. We could not have known, she whispered. A hologram flickered above her. Gonzole, a child, human, laughing, reaching up from a field of scorched earth. A timestamp showed it was taken 4 days after the first orbital strike. The child had survived, not because of mercy, but because of humanity's instinct to rebuild. Her second in command stepped forward. Orders, strategist. Krix shook her head slowly. No more orders. She collapsed to her knees. In the Halkari Triad mind, once the most unified war council in the quadrant, 3 voices dissolved into screams. One of them, the youngest mind, begged for death. Turn it off. Turn it off. But nothing could stop it, not the arbiters, not the Vindicator, not even the truth. Because the humans had done something unprecedented. They had weaponized perspective. On the Vindicator, Commander Hale leaned forward. Status: 84% of fleets have powered down, ceased all aggressive scans. 9% are in catatonic stasis, the rest still processing. Hale stared at the display, not with satisfaction, not with rage, with caution. Give them space to decide. Every species gets one clean ending. And in the space between planets, where warships once hung like blades, now there was only stillness, a ceasefire by force of understanding. But it wasn't over, because peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of choice. While most fleets go silent, a rogue splinter faction launches a desperate strike, unable to stomach surrender. But the Vindicator doesn't retaliate with destruction. Instead, it exposes their cowardice mid-attack, shaming them before the galaxy. The war turns inward as former allies abandon the aggressors. Humanity watches and waits. Peace is an offering, but not everyone accepts it. At 0:10, as the countdown hovered in endless suspension, a crimson signature lit up at the edge of Saturn's shadow. 12 vessels, old designs, modified beyond reason. Zaltari, a nomadic war species exiled from their own sector for crimes even the Council wouldn't speak of. And now they charge through the dark like rabid stars, power signatures peaking, weapons primed. Commander Hale's gaze darkened. "Zaltari strike," Ramos confirmed, voice clipped. "Confirmed." They broke the standoff, vectoring straight for the Yavari diplomat cluster. "They're going after the peacemakers," Elena Roth whispered from the lower console. "Cowards. On board." The lead Zaltari ship Breachclaw. The warlord Vurek let out a feral screech. "Let the weak beg. We'll end the lie of their peace in blood." Around him, bridge crew roared approval, teeth clacking in rhythm. Their ships dove hard toward the vulnerable midline, where Yavari, Thrice, and Vaxari vessels had clustered with shields lowered, not expecting betrayal. Not expecting one of their own to stab from within, target their atmospheric recyclers. "I want survivors choking when they burn," Vurak spat, and then the stars changed. The Vindicator did not move. It didn't have to. One of the arbiters did. It intercepted the Zaltari like a scalpel in God's hand, not with fire, but with exposure. The moment the Zaltari closed in, every fleet's holoscreen flashed, unauthorized, unstoppable. It was a live feed of Vurak's war room, audio and all. Let them die on their knees. They always feared us. They still will. It wasn't just intercepted, it was broadcast. Shame in real time. Fleet captains watched. Council members watched. Survivors of Zaltari raids, once silent, now vengeful, watched. And one by one, lights dimmed on the Zaltari assault wing, not from enemy fire, but from their allies turning on them. Missiles turned around, ion beams pierced their hulls. Even Yavari peacecraft activated defense canisters, severing propulsion veins from the Zaltari ships like surgery. The Breachclaw's engines flared, trying to retreat. Too late. No mercy. They weren't fighting humans now. They were being punished by the very fleets they had hidden among. On the Vindicator, Ramos looked stunned. They turned on their own. They weren't allies, Hale said. They were waiting to see if we'd finish the dirty work. And now they're afraid of what we'll do if they don't. Above the wreckage of the fallen Zaltari, silence returned. But it wasn't uneasy anymore. It was heavier, because for the first time in this war, aliens weren't looking at humanity with hatred. They were looking inward, at the rot, at the predators among them, at the fact that it wasn't humans who brought war to their stars, it was themselves and Earth. Earth had simply survived long enough to show them a reflection. Back in the neurocore, Elena Roth asked the question none of them had said aloud. "Are we winning?" The AI responded, "There is no win in reflection, only acceptance or denial." Space had never been this quiet, not even during truce, not even in mourning. It was the silence of after. The Zaltari were gone, not just destroyed, condemned by their own allies, and with them something else had vanished: justification. Rage turned to shame. Weapons powered down, not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of what had just happened. From the Vindicator, a new transmission went out, not words, not images. Silence. It carried no code, no instruction, but it moved through every fleet, every mind, a complete emotional dead zone, the absence of threat, the absence of judgment, only reflection. In that emptiness, the galaxy began to feel the enormity of its mistake. Admiral Velshar, Vuxari fleet, sat motionless in his command cradle. The lights around him pulsed in red standby. He wasn't giving orders. He wasn't fleeing. He was simply being. He looked at the feed from his own archives, now forcibly unlocked by the Vindicator's psychic bleed. He saw himself authorizing embargoes on human medical freighters. He saw his signature on a weapons contract that sold gas bombs to insurgents who hit Mars' outer colonies. And then he saw Earth's response. None. For 30 years. No retaliation. Just rebuilding. Why, he thought. Why wait so long? He opened a secure line. To Earth itself. The channel request blinked for 12 full seconds. Then it connected, not to the commander, not to a general, but to a civilian. Dr. Elina Roth, face calm and tired, appeared. "You're Vel Shah." "She," said. He bowed his head. "You let us live," he said. "Why?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked directly into the feed, into him. "Because vengeance is a cycle. And Earth was already a graveyard. We didn't want to be the ones who buried the stars. But this ship, these weapons, you could have ended us all." "Yes." "Why didn't you?" Elena's voice softened. "Because you had to see it. You had to feel it. We didn't want to kill your fleets. We wanted to kill your certainty." Elsewhere, Thriz diplomats dropped to all four knees. In Yeveri vessels, crews wept and tore rank sigils from their uniforms. Among the Halkari, the Triad mind shattered its own neural loop to avoid reliving their betrayal. And above them all, the Arbiters drifted like watchful titans, silent, still unmoving, until they were needed again. On board the Vindicator, the crew sat in meditative stillness. Commander Hale finally broke the quiet. "Are we ready?" Ramos looked up from his console. "Almost all fleets disengaged. Only 2 haven't responded." "Then we wait. You think they'll come around?" "I think," Hale said, "truth takes time." He looked at the countdown, still frozen at 0010, still waiting, not as a threat, but as a reminder. Because the war had not been won with power. It had been won with restraint, and that terrified the galaxy more than any weapon ever could. The galaxy teetered on the edge of an epoch. The Vindicator still hovered, unmoving. Its war-burned hull glowed like it had been kissed by God and cursed by time. Above Mars, the stars looked softer. But nobody exhaled. Not yet. Because the countdown still glowed across every alien ship's interface. 10 like a blade dangling mid-fall, like the word "if" carved into the fabric of space. On board the Halkari cruiser, Wisdom of Bone, Ambassador Revk finally broke his isolation. He had not spoken since the psychic wave collapsed his mind's third pillar. Now he emerged before his crew, walking without support, wrapped in ceremonial null silk. "I would speak to the humans," he said. He was old, even for a Halkari. His voice reached Earth by way of the Vindicator, transmitted on a channel reserved for truth-seeking parley. Elina Roth answered. "You're the last of your line," she said softly. "I am," Revik replied. "And I have a question." He lifted his gaze, not defiant, not afraid, just tired. Why did the countdown stop at 10? The question struck harder than any cannon. Across the broken alliances, diplomats paused. Fleet commanders leaned forward. Even Hale sat straighter on the Vindicator's bridge. Helena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked through a long corridor within the ship's core. She passed quiet personnel, humming monitors, bulkheads lined with quotes from fallen outposts and burned cities. When she reached the memorial chamber, she spoke. "Because it's the last second you can still change your mind." In every alien vessel, the weight of her words settled like gravity. The countdown hadn't stopped because Earth needed it to. It had stopped because they still could. That 10th second wasn't a trap. It was a question. Will you stay changed? Above Jupiter, the Yeveri began dismantling their long-range particle cannons. Not because Earth asked them to, but because they now saw what the humans had refused to become. On the outer rim, Thriz deep ships began transmitting invitations to share survival tech with species they once hunted. In the remnants of the Vuxari fleet, Admiral Vex initiated something unthinkable. A truth exchange. All data, all history, no edits, no redactions, even their darkest sins. The countdown remained. But now it didn't feel like a sword. It felt like a promise. On the Vindicator, Commander Hale stood beside Elena as she returned. He glanced at the display. They're asking what happens if someone restarts the clock. Elena raised an eyebrow. Who's asking? Everyone, she considered, then gave a simple reply. Then the rest of the seconds belong to us. In the cold vacuum between suns, 7 arbiters aligned in silent formation, not advancing, not retreating, waiting, guardians not of Earth, but of what Earth had become. And the galaxy finally understood. Humanity had never wanted to be feared. They just wanted to be left alone, and believed when they said, never again. As diplomatic channels ignite across the quadrant, species once divided by war begin to forge hesitant connections. Humanity sends no demands, only records. But when the Council convenes to offer Earth a seat, they're met with a chilling refusal. Humanity doesn't want a place at the table. They've built their own. Peace, it turned out, was messier than war. Wounds that didn't bleed were the hardest to clean. In the wake of the Vindicator's revelation, entire species began confessing to truths their own people didn't know. The Yavari disclosed a century of black site experimentation. The Threes revealed ritualized culling systems in their expansion colonies. The Halkari admitted they'd known about the Mars assassination attempt and let it happen to see how Earth would react. But Earth said nothing. No press tours, no declarations. They simply transmitted records, files, images, testimonies, survivors, and then they went silent again. The Unified Galactic Council convened for the first time in 60 cycles. Attendance was mandatory. Single crystalline chamber suspended in the low-gravity ring of Cygnus 5. With fleet escorts stripped of weapons, they lit a seat in the center, human-sized, symbolic, empty. "Summon them," said High Speaker Lorix of the Vuxari. Ambassador Revk, still wearing null silk, nodded. "They deserve a voice here." A transmission. Beacon was sent, encrypted, flawless, delivered directly to the Vindicator. It was received, it was read, and it was answered. The reply came in 7 words. "We decline." "We already built ours." The chamber fell silent. "What does it mean?" someone whispered. It was Yevri Commander Ilani who translated it best. "They don't want a seat at our table. They built a new table, and they're inviting only the honest." Back on Earth, in orbit above the ruins of old Tokyo, 7 domes shimmered on the dark side of the planet. Each was a vault. Inside, encrypted culture, science, truth, philosophy. Earth's new diplomacy was not through speeches. It was through access, a gift to any species brave enough to come without weapons, without lies. The price of entry, transparency. In low Mars orbit, a lone Halkari scout ship approached, unarmed, unescorted. It was scanned 3 times, then allowed to land. When its pilot stepped into Dome 3, they were met not by soldiers, but by children, learning, speaking, offering water. Humanity wasn't threatening anyone anymore. They didn't have to. Their message was embedded in every action. "You made monsters. We chose not to become them." On the Vindicator, Ramos stood at the forward deck. "Council's reeling," he said. "They expected us to join." Commander Hale shrugged. "We were never one of them. They're offering reparations. We don't want blood money. They're scared we'll isolate them. We already have." Ramos looked out the viewport at the forming Arbiter network. Their orbits stable, predictable, watching. "So what now?" Hale smiled faintly. Now we teach them what peace looks like, under armed supervision, because Earth had no interest in revenge, but they would never again ask for peace. Now they'd enforce it. Trust is fragile, so is memory, and some species, especially those with long, untouchable legacies, did not forget what it felt like to be feared. They missed it. They wanted it back. On a hollowed-out moon in Sector Virex 6, 6 figures stood in a black glass room, pulsing with anti-scan shielding. Former council chairman. Secret architects of Earth's containment. You let the child speak. For them, one hissed. That scientist. They refused the seat, another said. Mocked our structure. They've created their own network. Tech trading, military transparency, and selective diplomacy. It's a shadow empire, growled the third, and no one calls it that. So we'll make them bleed, quietly. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. A false flag attack, modified Thrice drones, anonymized payload. Target, a Vuxari colony that had just signed the Earth Compact. Human weapons, fake signature, fabricated orders. It would shatter the compact, destroy the fragile thread of trust, and make the galaxy beg for the old council back. They didn't know. They were being watched. Not by orbitals, not by spies, but by something they thought extinct. The ghost codes, the buried malware, embedded in old council servers, written in a hybrid language no one had spoken since the siege of Europa. Earth hadn't just survived the purge, they'd made a mirror. Digital double of the council's darkest networks, and they'd let it sleep there, waiting. The betrayal wasn't intercepted, it was expected. As the drones launched, silent and cloaked, the trap closed. They never made it out of the system. Above them, the Vindicator decloaked, 10 kilometers long, surrounded by 3 more ships of its class. Not copies, successors. The fleet hadn't just prepared for war, they'd scaled it. Inside the command center, Hale spoke one word. Now. The Vindicator didn't fire. Instead, it transmitted the conspirators' full meeting, uncut, undistorted, to every major fleet in the galaxy, projected in the sky above neutral planets, played on loop on council homeworlds. We wanted the old. Oh, fear back, said one. We'll make them bleed quietly, said another. And then the final blow. Humanity shared access to the ghost codes. Every species could now scan their systems and see who had lied to them, who had been watching them, who had built their wars in silence. It didn't trigger violence, it triggered revolts. Entire planetary governments fell overnight. Commanders were arrested by their own crews. The Council's name became radioactive. And Earth said nothing, not even an "I told you so," because it wasn't about revenge. It was about removing the infection without killing the patient and letting the wound heal right this time. On board the Vindicator, Ramos looked pale. They knew we'd do it again, he whispered. They really believed we'd snap. Hale's reply was quiet. They don't understand. We already snapped. We just snapped upward. The air above Antarctica shimmered with thermal interference. A single entrance, no weapons, no escorts, just invitation. Dome 1, the first of Earth's memory sanctums, was about to receive visitors. 7 species, each responsible in part for Earth's long exile, now approached not with demands, but questions. The Yeveri High Warden bowed without speaking. The Halkari envoy brought ancient texts to offer, inked in their own lifeblood. The Vuxari admiral, once proud and cold, stood unarmed in full ceremonial humility. A Thrice speaker, once a child during the siege of Titan, carried only a sealed cube labeled Apology. Others followed. No cameras, no networks, no declarations. This was not politics. This was atonement. Inside, Dr. Elena Roth waited in the circle of white stone. No armor, no shield, just presence. She spoke simply. "We are not here to forgive," she said. "We are here to decide what we do with your shame." The Yeveri Warden finally asked what no one had dared. Is the countdown still running? There was no need to specify, they all knew. The 10-second timer, the ever-present threat, the sword that never dropped. Elena nodded. Yes. Across the stars, the timer still sat in every ship's databanks. 10 immutable, unhacked, untouched, a ghost that whispered, "We are always ready," and yet Earth had not used it, not once, because it wasn't a threat, it was a lock. Elena reached into her coat and withdrew a single key, a neural interface, gold-traced and bio-keyed to her alone. "The final key," she said, once. "This is activated. The countdown ends. The weapon disarms. The fleet demobilizes. The arbiters sleep," gasps. She let the silence settle before continuing. "But if we do that, we don't get a second key." The choice was not Earth's alone. Now it was the galaxy's. This was her condition. "You want the timer gone? Then you must become the lock. All of you." The Vuxari Admiral stepped forward, voice cracking. "We have no honor left." "Then rebuild it," Elena replied. The Halkari bowed. "We have only sorrow." "Good. Use it." She walked to the center of the room, held up the key. "If this is activated, we don't restart it. There will be no next Vindicator, no next strike." "They will try again," someone whispered. "They might," she admitted, "but this time you'll stop them." A pulse of warmth filled the room, not from machinery, but from shared breath, shared grief, shared choice. One by one, the 7 delegates reached into the light and placed their hands beside hers. A new countdown began. 10 seconds, not toward war, but toward trust. This time, forward. And when the timer reached 0, the key dissolved in her palm. The signal flashed. Fleet-wide, the last door locked itself behind humanity, and the galaxy had no choice but to walk forward with them. There are moments that live outside time, moments that refuse to fade. No matter how many decades pass, moments that do not belong to one species or even 1,000. This was one of them, and it began the way it always did, with a glimpse. No one ever forgot the first time they saw it. Not on a screen, not in reports. In person, the Vindicator didn't arrive with a flash. It didn't announce itself with sirens or declarations. It simply appeared. Massive, angular, quiet, like a scar cut across reality, orbiting above the Council Armada, alone, still, watching. The Armada had numbered 2,000, the most powerful, well-funded war fleet ever assembled, a web of species who had, for centuries, considered themselves the architects of peace through superiority. And yet, they did not fire, they didn't even move, because the Vindicator didn't need to charge weapons. It didn't need to threaten. Its very presence carried a truth too enormous to speak aloud. If this is what they built in silence, what else did we miss? The hull bore no insignia, no national flags, only a single message etched along its dorsal spine: never again. Beneath that, a list of names, burned into tritanium, the fallen of Earth, civilians, soldiers, children, the dead who never got justice, only deterrence. Commander Hale's voice came over every channel then, calm and low. "We are not here to destroy you, but we will not be destroyed again. We give you 10 seconds. For the rest of your life, remember what you do with them." 10 seconds. It was always 10. The seconds the galaxy spent frozen, the seconds that rewrote every doctrine, every defense council, every foreign policy briefing, because they weren't looking at a ship, they were looking at what they had made and what humanity had become because of them. The Vindicator never fired, not once. It didn't need to. Its mission wasn't vengeance, it was clarity. Now, decades later, children across dozens of planets study the event. It has 1,000 names: the 10-second era, the turning, the day the sky didn't fall. But among humans, it's just called what it always was: their first glimpse of a human warship. And that day, in every heart, no matter the species, something moved. Not just fear, not just awe, but a question that still haunts the stars. What kind of species builds that, and then chooses not to use it? And humanity's quiet answer, whispered, across galaxies by those who survived, the kind you should never provoke again.